Okay, good morning, Earth. This is Adam Sturch, broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting contact. Alright, yesterday I came up with this really nice light blue for one of the highlight layers on Nurture's skin. And I'm not entirely happy with the separation between this light green and this dark green. So I want to make the first two lines of these eye leaf scales that light blue color. And then I want a hand in this composition. So I'm going to anthropomorphize this tree into a hand about like this, with this as the thumb and this is the fingers, and this arm will come down here. Maybe there'll be a head like this, and that'll be an elbow, something like that. So I'm just going to kind of rough that in with some reddish brown that I mixed up. And that's probably it for this morning. But I want to get that done at least today. And happy Christmas Eve, people, everyone. And yeah, here we go. New York studio by Vicki Ward, longtime investigative journalist, host and co-producer of the podcast series Chasing Ghislaine, the untold story of the woman in Epstein's shadow, which also became a TV series by the same name. Vicki, welcome back to Democracy Now! First of all, if you can respond to what has happened so far, December 19th was the deadline. That was Friday. Now the Justice Department, days later, after releasing thousands of documents, then erasing them from the website, now calling for for attorneys in the United States to come to the Justice Department and help them redact what has been redacted, what has not been redacted. Can you respond to all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think right from the get-go, right from when months ago, Pam Bondi said in an interview, oh, I've got the Epstein files sitting on my desk. I mean, that was the first indication, I think, of the contemptuous, cavalier attitude that has gone on inside this Justice Department.
Right, she said she was going to release the
Shoes files, they were there on her desk. I don't think that these thousands and thousands of pages were sitting on her desk. I mean, so, you know, and it's heartbreaking, frankly, to see these files being dribbled out. It's so against the spirit in which the victims went to Capitol Hill, asked for transparency, which bipartisan Congress agreed with them that they are owed this transparency so that crimes like this may never happen again. And now to have this mishmash, which even I, who am not a victim of sexual abuse from Jeffrey Epstein, but I sat through Ghislaine Maxwell's trial and I found it very, very upsetting. I think most of us journalists, you know, we're hard-bitten, you know, we've seen some things. It was really difficult to hear the stories of abuse in that courtroom and really difficult to learn the scale of it. And these pages have that story writ large again and again and again. And given the chaos of this rollout, there's no easy way for these survivors to quickly search what they're looking for. I want to see...
That was part of the law, by the way, that there had to be a working search function on these documents.
And there isn't. And they have to wade through page after page after page of very, very difficult stuff. I think just on a moral basis, it's disgusting.
It's really important to be talking to you today because years ago you wrote this piece in Vanity Fair. You're the person who spoke to Maria Farmer. Now, that conversation did not appear in Vanity Fair, and if you can remind our viewers and listeners what happened, because this has to do with the collusion of the press with Jeffrey Epstein, but you know her story very well.
Yes.
This woman who for decades has tried to stop the abuse by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yes, well, I didn't speak to Maria Farmer just once. You know, in the fall of 2002, when I was assigned to write this profile of Jeffrey Epstein, I met with Maria. I spoke to her many, many times. And she said exactly what has now appeared in the FBI's files. She said that in 1996, she had had a horrific night while up in a guest house of Jeffrey Epstein's home on Les Wexner's estate in Ohio. She'd been up there painting. She was an artist. Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had come to visit her. There had followed some horrible sexual abuse, after which she had run out of the house and taken a dog.
The sexual abuse perpetrated by both Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein.
But in all of this, she had left behind a lockbox of nude photographs of her sisters. Not just Annie, there was another sister. And, she was a figurative artist. She, that's the kind of work that she did. And she was terrified that Epstein was going to do, excuse me, something terrible with these. And she got phone calls from both Epstein and Maxwell threatening her. So she phoned, in fact, she told me she phoned the police in New York first. And they said, this is not for us. This is, going across state lines. You have to phone the FBI. She did phone the FBI. Now, the FBI back in the day, I phoned the FBI.
They threatened to burn her.
but she phoned the FBI about the lockbox and was worried, desperately worried, what could they do with nude photographs of her sisters, who were babies, teenagers.
They were her younger sisters.
And when I was reporting this piece, the FBI tend not to answer journalists like me, so I wasn't able to get that record back then. I also phoned the police, and they didn't produce their records, which I wish they had, because they had a record too. But as I think a lot of journalists know how this tragic story ends, which was that when towards the closing of the piece, I had to go to Jeffrey Epstein and to Ghislaine Maxwell with the allegations of both Maria Farmer as to what had happened and her younger sister, Annie, who had said very clearly on the record that she had been taken to New Mexico for a weekend and
She was a state there.
Yes, and at the age of 16, and had to have a topless massage from Ghislaine Maxwell, and then Jeffrey Epstein one morning jumped into bed for quote-unquote a cuddle with her. Epstein went berserk when I put those allegations, as did Ghislaine Maxwell. Absolutely berserk. He, suddenly sent over a whole bunch of paperwork that he claimed were letters from their mother, letters from them that showed that no, this could not be true. And the next thing I knew was that as we were closing the piece, a fact checker sent me a note saying, "You're not going to believe who's now in the office at Vanity Fair." It was Jeffrey Epstein, who knows what happened.
Meeting with
Graydon Carter, the editor of the magazine. I do not know what was said in that meeting. I will say, Amy, that
you were about to give birth to twins.
I was at home on bed rest. I thought we were done with this piece. I did find in these files that when the first batch that was released, that there was a section in a binder containing photographs that was called Vanity Fair. I did notice that the photographs in that binder, in that section, were the ones that were used accompanying my piece in the magazine, which is very unusual because Vanity Fair normally prides itself on its photography as much as it does on its words. So one has to assume they provided the photographs. One has to ask, what was the quid pro quo? My piece finally ran. The Farmer sisters and their allegations were not in it, and the reason that is so terrible and devastating is that we had exposed them, I had exposed them to Ghislaine Maxwell and to Graydon Carter. And the story doesn't end there. The FBI then phoned me about, I want to say a year later, 2004, about the Farmer sisters. And I did tell them what had happened. So I would like to see my interview notes somewhere in these
And you haven't seen
files.
that?
No, I have not.
But that certainly is not classified information. That
No.
is proof, once again.
All right, so that helps their opacity. And gives
100%.
another color in the divisions
100%.
there,
The other thing
which
I
is
think
kind
you
of
see,
nice.
it's not
So now I'm going to
just
switch
the
brushes
rollout itself
and
that shambles.
see what
The
I can do
content
with that
in
tree
it
trunk.
kind of paints a picture of a shambolic FBI. This is an FBI that seems to take its lead quite often from the press. I will say it's interesting, I learned that something I'd reported is kind of laid out on the page clearly, which is that were it not for David Boies, the lawyer who represented Virginia Giuffre in her civil litigation against Ghislaine Maxwell, Virginia sued for defamation.
Who brought down
Yes.
Andrew, the prince,
Yes.
no longer.
Right, and Virginia, as we know, tragically died of suicide earlier this year. But you can see in these files, in that litigation, which was in 2016, you can see notes of conversations. David Boies went to the feds. He went to the Southern District, said you need to look at what is in this discovery, you need to look at these depositions, because this shows the bigger crime. You see the feds tracking this, but you don't see them doing anything until again you see them pass around links to the Miami Herald, links to Julie Brown's story in end of 2018. And it's almost like they are having to follow, almost, like Inspector Clouseau, these breadcrumbs that are left for them by everybody else. And I'm sure the survivors find this really disheartening in a way to watch.
Why do you think President Trump has approached this the way he has? And what about the information and all that has come out around him, not necessarily criminal, but the removal of his name from so many different documents, and then you see his name once in a document that was redacted, and so you know that it's actually him. He's the one who campaigned on the release of the Jeffrey Epstein documents. Now he had to sign this release into law, but the way they are dragging their feet, talk as we wrap up about what you expect to see, the incredible power of the survivors banding together.
Well, this is speculation, but my gut, and I do know President Trump, it tells me that he doesn't like a story in which there's any sort of grey or nuance that he isn't somehow the best, the absolute best. And this is a story which again and again and again brings up his past, and a past that presented a very different portrait of Donald Trump than the one he would like to portray now. I will say that, having sat in the Maxwell trial, we did see his name come up on the screen, on the flight logs, in that key period when Maxwell and Epstein were grooming and recruiting one of their major victims who was attending Interlochen, a school for artistic, gifted children. You did see Flight's name again and Trump's name again and again and again on the manifest. And it was a head scratcher, because it was really impossible at that time to put the pieces of this jigsaw puzzle together.
Because he denied being on any flights,
No.
and he denied being at the island.
Well, and I never saw any records of him being on the island. I don't know if he denied being on any flights, but I think that, you can see if you're Trump, this is all too close for comfort. And it's not very comfortable to have these things out, and Trump being Trump, he'd rather not address it.
And where do you see this going for the survivors and for Pam Bondi? Could she be held in contempt?
Well, I really hope Congress does their job. I mean, one of the things we need to see in the Trump administration is the different branches of government actually doing what they're supposed to do and holding each other to account.
Finally, you are the expert on Ghislaine Maxwell. She is now in a minimum security prison, no sex abuse. No sex perpetrator has been put in a prison camp like she has after she had interviews with what the Deputy Attorney General, who was Trump's former attorney. Could you see Trump pardoning her, and she has appealed for the reopening of the case?
Well, I think two of the people who come out absolutely appallingly from this latest document is Ghislaine Maxwell in her correspondence with the former Prince Andrew, arranging quote-unquote inappropriate girls for him. I think people will be sickened by that. As regarding a pardon, never say never, but I think President Trump is a man who's concerned at this point with legacy and with history. And I think if he were to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, that blot would stain all the other things, the accomplishments he likes to talk about that he's done. So I personally would be shocked.
I want to thank you, Vicki Ward. We'll continue to follow the story. Longtime investigative journalist, host, and co-producer of the podcast series Chasing Ghislaine, the untold story of the woman in the Epstein shadow, which also became a TV series by the same name. When we come back, we speak to longtime immigrant rights activist Jeanette Vizqueta Ramirez. She was just released Monday from a Colorado ICE jail after more than 9 months. A judge ruled her detention was unconstitutional. Back in 30 seconds. DemocracyNow.org. I'm Amy Good. We turn now to Colorado, where longtime immigrant rights activist Jeanette Vizqueta Ramirez has been released from an ICE jail after almost 10 months in detention. Jeanette reunited with her family Monday after she was released on bond following a judge's ruling her detention was unconstitutional. She was arrested in March, ambushed by ICE agents during her work break at Target, later transferred to an immigration jail in Aurora, Colorado, run by the private prison company Geo Group. Jeanette Vizqueta gained national attention in 2017 when she took sanctuary in a Denver church along with her children, 3 of whom are U.S. born, to avoid deportation. In May, Jeanette won the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Award. I spoke with Jeanette Vizqueta on Tuesday. You have been in jail for 9 months. How does it feel to be free?
This moment is one mixed emotions, and my person and my family. 9 months, 7 days is a long time in detention. But every time I have hope that one day I'm released. My legal team work very strong. I'm continuing my job, safe and detention. My community fight very strong for me, safe for 9 months. And finally I'm here. I'm very emotional in this moment. Yesterday my kids and me mentioned it's similar one block. The emotions is real. I'm here all the time. It's possible. Talk to my kids, touch my kids, kiss my kids, my kiddos. It's very emotional. It's very, very emotional in this moment.
Can you talk about what your plans are now and your response to the judge's ruling, Judge Nina Wong?
Yeah, well, I feel very happy for the decision for take this board. my plan later, my case continue, my case not finished, my case continue. I don't know for how many times. My plan is these last days of this year, I pass my time for my family later in the new year, come back and my job, the activist. I never stop.
That was Jeanette Vizquera Ramirez speaking with us on Tuesday after she was released Monday after more than 9 months in an ICE jail in Aurora, Colorado. We'll hear from her, more from her in a minute. But first we go to Denver, and we're joined by Jennifer Piper, Program Director at the American Friends Service Committee, part of a coalition supporting Jeanette. Welcome back to Democracy Now!, Jennifer. It's great to have you with us. You all held a rally news conference yesterday. That's why Jeanette had to finish her conversation early with us so she could get to it. Talk about the significance of the judge's ruling. She demanded she be released, not be wearing a ankle shackle. She said that her detention was unconstitutional.
Yes, the district judge, after 9 months and many arguments back and forth, did rule that on Jeanette's habeas, that her prolonged detention was unconstitutional, and ordered that the government hold a bond hearing within a week, and that the burden of proof in that hearing would be on the government. Usually in immigration court, you have to prove yourself that you're not a flight risk or a danger and you're good moral character. In this instance, that was flipped. And at that court hearing, the government continued to try to impede her right to speech and the public access by denying journalists and observers access to that public hearing for 2.5 hours. We finally gained access, but it took us 2.5 hours of arguing with GEO and ICE officials to get into that hearing.
And talk about what Jeanette has meant and symbolized. I mean, there was a private Senate bill that was passed in her case that prolonged her ability to be free in this country and seek legalization. It was introduced right by Senator Michael Bennet.
Yeah, Jeanette's been an activist and a human rights advocate for almost 30 years. And even before she founded the Sanctuary Coalition here in Denver and utilized that coalition, she's been a labor rights and immigrant activist. So her detention was intentional to try and silence people across the country, not only immigrant leaders, but also citizens. I can't tell you how many people I heard from that said, you know, if she can't win her case with all of her activism and notoriety over all of these years, what is the chance for the rest of us? And the fact that she is free now after 9 months of weekly vigils, incredible work by Lichter Immigration, the Rocky Mountain Immigrant Advocacy Network, and the Durham College of Law's Immigration and Policy Clinic, the fact that she is free right now is emboldening people across this country to continue to take up space and to not cede to this administration's efforts to silence people. Really, at the end of the day, these corporations, Geo Group, BI, the 10 other contractors that have been paid millions of dollars by this administration to try and hunt down our neighbors, their goal is social control, and they've thrown immense power that they have at their disposal at all of us, but this also demonstrates the fragility of their hold over everyday people when we stand up together. Our safety comes from our connection, trust, and continuing to claim space in the public sphere. It comes from doing new things that each of us have never done before, and being connected across all these struggles. Whether you're a fisherman in Venezuela or Palestine, whether you're a person who's about to lose their affordable care, every single one of us in this moment is under attack.
So that's another color division and much better opacity throughout the outermost layer of irises. I even kind of fixed the wonky circulature of them somewhat. I mean, they're not compassed out, but you know, they're a little more even. And then we anthropomorphize this tree with a happy little agonized,
jail on
what a
Monday,
suicide
spent that
mug.
day with her family.
Something.
Yesterday on
I don't know.
Tuesday,
He
I
actually
had a
looks kind of
chance
happy.
to,
Maybe
talk
either
with her. She's
either
the
in
mother of
anguish or
4
in
when she was
ecstasy. One of the two.
arrested
Maybe
by
it's one and the
federal
same.
agents in Denver in
But the
March.
hand
I'd asked
is
her to
in.
describe her time in
Now we're going to
detention.
detail all of that and make that sort of this area's focal point for detail. What I do with the surrounding space on that, I might open it up into another more grayish winter-y dimension. I'm not sure yet though. But anyway, that's it for the moment. Thank you for watching. That's Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting contact, and wishing everyone a nice Christmas Eve.
Pero hay cualquier